Hi, this is Chris Foreman from Madness, and you're listening to the Stateside Madness podcast.
Hi there, folks out there. I'd like you and me, Tommy McGuire in this combo.
Hello, and welcome to the Stateside Madness podcast, the one and only podcast of the official Madness American fan service. I'm Lori, along with my co-host Polly, here to bring you news, reviews, and deep dives into the nutty sound of the British pop band Madness. Welcome back to Stateside Madness. This is the one and only podcast dedicated to the band Madness. I'm Lori.
And I'm Polly.
And we have something kind of unique for you today. We haven't done something like this before, but this is going to be an episode about the politics of madness. And we've really been doing a lot of research to put this together for you. So we're looking forward to this. But before we get into that, let's start the communicator. So first up in the communicator, happy birthday to Woody Woodgate, who turned 61 on Tuesday, October 19th. Many happy returns.
And also on Tuesday the 19th, it happens to be the 42nd anniversary of the One Step Beyond album.
One of our favorites. Okay, next up, Mark Bedford recently appeared on an episode of the Jamming Fanzine podcast in an episode called Mods and Sods. Hey, Mark, how about doing an episode of our podcast? We would love to have you.
Yes, that we would. Hey, I mean, he's in the band. Why wouldn't we?
You just want me to embarrass myself because I used to have a crush on him back in the day.
Who haven't you had a crush on in the band?
No, actually, the only crush I've really had has been Mark. I've never had a crush on. I've never had a crush on Tomo. I just love him.
Oh, okay.
It's a platonic kind of love.
But
I
guess so.
But yeah, so Mark, I can't promise that I'm not going to go completely fangirl on you, but we'll try to make you comfortable.
I'll keep you under control. And on a sadder note, we just got word this week, although this will air about a week later. So it would appear that Everett Morton, the original drummer from The Beat, or English Beat, as we would call them here in the United States, passed away on October 8th. Quite sad that first there would have been Saxa, then Ranking Roger, and now Everett. And I do hope we're spared many more of the band passing away anytime soon.
Our deepest condolences to the Morton family.
Let me tell you how I feel. I feel I'm scared.
Chris, what time is it?
Showtime!
Okay, so now on to our episode, The Politics of Madness. So let me explain a little bit what we had in mind when we came up with this idea. Very frequently I hear about lots of musicians and lots of bands. I hear fans saying, boy, I really like them when they're not getting all political, or I wish they'd stick to the music. And, they were better before they got all political. And I've heard that criticism about Madness before, and it kind of drives me nuts because if you know anything about the band, they've always been political.
Yeah, that they have. And, at least so much as they continue to have songs of at least a vaguely political nature on every album. But they're not so overt as to be kind of right in your face most of the time. which I think to their credit plays really, really well with their fan base. So it is no wonder that Madness does have a political aspect to them. They were heavily influenced by Jamaican ska music, which in and of itself is very political by nature. Early ska songs reflected the experience of people in Jamaica in the 1950s and 1960s, when Jamaica was plagued with poverty, violence, and crime. In 1962, when Jamaica gained independence from Britain, many of the popular music reflected the new political realities.
And then we started to see the two-tone ska movement. And when that took a hold in Britain, many of the two-tone bands' songs addressed racism and urban blight and took aim at the policies of Margaret Thatcher's conservative government.
In fact, the day that Madness played their first gig using the name Madness was May 3rd, 1979, the same day that Margaret Thatcher was elected Prime Minister of Great Britain.
It seems like Madness and Thatcher have always been intertwined somehow, for good or for bad. Madness's members have always been active politically, for example, with the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, or CND, and Artists Against Apartheid.
Two of the band members, Betters and Woody, participated in a charity record called Starvation. That was back in 1985, and it was inspired by Band Aid.
So it's worth noting here that not all 7 band members are of one mind politically. As you might imagine, anytime you get a group of 7 people together, even if they're the best of friends, there's going to be some disagreement. And I know very recently I had read that the band were of 2 different minds regarding Brexit, where some of the band members were pro-Brexit, some of them were against. So we don't necessarily mean to imply that all 7 band members are of the same affiliation politically. As we start to listen to some of their songs and discuss the political meanings behind them, I want to give a special thank you to the website 7raggedmen.com. I had a good amount of research, but there were a few songs that we couldn't really find much information on. So late last night, I went on the website 7raggedmen.com and I found lots of stuff that I was missing. So big shout out to Ian at 7 Ragged Men, and thank you for helping with the research here. So one of the band's earliest songs with a political vibe to it was Don't Quote Me on That. And the story behind this is, as listeners will know, because we've discussed this in some of our previous episodes, very early on, Madness inadvertently found themselves embroiled in a political controversy of sorts. Members of the National Front and British movement were coming to Madness shows and stirring up conflict. A reporter for the magazine New Musical Express pressed the band for comment. Carl reportedly told the reporter, "Some of those kids are my mates and they're good kids. They know I don't agree with their views, and so what if they wear Union Jacks and Nazi swastikas? I don't care about that." So he was a young, naive teenager, probably didn't realize what he was stepping in when he said that. And the article ran in NME with the headline, "Nice band, shame about the fans." So Carl wrote the song Don't Quote Me on That as a direct response to the NME piece.
It's all eggs, bacon, beans, and a fried slice.
Did you hear the one? Yeah. The one they wrote in the paper just the other day. Well, would you believe it? What I said, they took it all the wrong way. Now you gotta be careful about what you say, cause they've got a bad habit. Will you read in between the lines? Or is that what I said? Now I just can't remember. They seem to have a very good memory though. But as far as I'm concerned, you don't have to be black, white, Chinese, or anything really. Just enjoy. Shut up, listen, and dance.
Now, a few years later, in a 1984 interview, Carl said, "It's unfortunate because we were part of the two-tone thing and we were all white. We felt at the time we'd written a song, The Prince, which was a tribute to a black guy, Prince Buster. We were very naive." And unfortunately, I think these allegations of racism continued to haunt the band for a long time.
That they did, and it's not lost on me that now that we're living in the internet age, the frequency with which minor miscommunications and things like that really come to bite people in the ass, and everybody's always going to come out with some sort of retraction or clarification on very nearly everything they say. So, NME that long ago was one thing, but boy, doesn't it come around with great frequency now. Another Madness song, Mrs. Hutchinson, Mike Barson composition, is about Mike's mother, Pat, and her experiences with Britain's National Health Service. Now, she had gone to the doctor feeling unwell, and it turns out that they told her that she had terminal cancer. Now, several weeks go by. The hospital realizes they made a mistake. They had misdiagnosed her. She really just had gallstones. And so there you go. That's a little fodder there for Mike Barson to get a little bit of aggression.
Well, Mrs. Hutchinson, you're looking healthy, but just in case, here's a pill, a remedy. Well, Mrs. Hutchinson, this is something that little upset. I thought I diagnosed. Well, not to worry, it's not what I supposed. You better sit down, son, your mother's very ill. We may have to operate, it's more than just a chill. But don't you worry, it's all in competent hands. We believe it's under the ribs of one of their glands.
But yeah, it's a unfortunate scenario, and enough to make anybody a little bit skewed against the National Health Service.
Yeah, it was my understanding that the doctor was also saying one thing to the family and another thing to Mrs. Barson, where, oh yes, Mrs. Barson, you're going to be okay. And then when she leaves the room, oh, it's really dire. She's not going to make it. It's terminal. And I think that that's alluded to at the very end of the song. I have to tell you, it's my duty to speak. Your mother will not last the week. But then, ironically, after all of that, finding out, yeah, it's just gallstones. I can't even imagine.
Terrifying.
Yeah. If that happened here, we'd be talking malpractice lawsuits. Next up, we have Tomorrow's Dream, which was written by Lee Thompson and Mike Barson. Now, there's actually a couple different things going on in this song at once. It's primarily a commentary on animal testing, told from the perspective of the animals. However, there's also a commentary on Reagan's Star Wars missile defense program, according to Lee. And that would probably be that line, "You can't burn me with your laser beams." Let's listen.
Just leave us alone, we don't want to mow. Only if you make us smashed on the lock until I've had to drop. Tried to get my message through. Off goes another with another's brother. My arms try to bend across to a friend. You can't burn me with your laser beams. It's pointed at you and tomorrow's dream. You burn my body quietly set free, and I'll cry for you as I sway from a tree.
Same with this next song, Sign of the Times. While perhaps not political per se, this song is a satire about British tabloid culture. Now, British tabloids are notoriously brutal. One thing that comes to mind was the death of Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed, right, who were being chased by paparazzi for the British tabloids. And that's just one example. I mean, I can think of several others off the top of my head. Let's listen to Sign of the Times.
This is disposable. Throw it away. This is an animal. Don't let it stray. That was the past, so leave it behind. This is the future. It's all in our mind. Feeding your interest in between lines. Reading the caring one. Sign of the times. This is your Englishman. This is his lawn. This is your female. Undone and torn.
So there you have Sign of the Times, a commentary on British tabloid culture. Any thoughts on that one, Polly?
Not so much. Aside from, my experience, the little bit I've been in the UK, we certainly have the supermarket tabloid sort of thing happening here. In the UK, it's a whole nother level. And you're right, they are quite vicious.
Another one that comes to mind, though, was the situation with Paula Yates and Michael Hutchins of INXS. And they were just hounded by the British press. Yeah, to an absolute extreme that we don't see here. So, Polly, next up is Mr. Speaker Gets the Word. And I know that Mr. Speaker refers to the Speaker in the British House of Commons, which is kind of the equivalent of the Speaker of the House of Representatives here in the US. So in that respect, I know it's political, but other than that, I couldn't tell you exactly what it's about.
You're not wrong. Mr. Speaker Gets the Word is almost like a deliberately vague and a bit sing-song. Although we know and would be right to say that it's about the Speaker of the British House of Commons, it doesn't really hit at a whole lot. So why don't we actually take a listen to Mr. Speaker Gets the Word? That would be a Suggs and Barson composition.
Wriggles from his captor's arms. Mr. Speaker gets the word. Running now from the alarms. Speak his mind free as a bird. Free now to roam around. Stand up straight when he quotes. Spread the word that he has found. Books of verse and scribbled notes. Mr. Speaker gets the word to tell the secrets he has heard. Speaks so fast his words are slurred. The Speaker gets the word.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea. Like I said, I know it's political, but I couldn't tell you what exactly they're getting at there. So, yeah.
So next up, we're going to talk about a Lee Thompson composition. It is Blue-Skinned Beast. Now, Blue-Skinned Beast is about the war in the Falklands that happened in 1982 between Britain and Argentina.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it's being told from the perspective of a military recruiter. Maybe we should listen to it. Let's listen to it and then let's talk a little more about it.
I can fly you to your loved ones, but I can promise no return to a shell-shocked God-forsaken, where the craters still lay burn. Have a drink on me, have a drink on me. Still the worst is over, that I hope you understand. Then you're one more hurdle over, a protector of the land. Have a drink on me, I put you down to the company. 3 cheers to the blue-skin beast, dip it. To the blue-skin beast, dip it. 3 cheers to the blue-skin
So yeah, doesn't that kind of sound like, he's trying to recruit somebody here, have a drink on me, I'll put you down for the company?
Yeah, I can see that definitely. Early on listening to this, because it's not a hugely noteworthy song, save for it appears on the Madness American, compilation. So it's a song that American fans would have learned quite some time ago. I kind of go back a little bit between whether it could be a recruiter, whether it could be somebody just retelling tales of their exploits in the war or things like that. But yeah, I think it's a good take to say that it could be from the perspective of a recruiter.
And I know we talked about this a little bit when we talked about that first compilation album, the American compilation. And I kind of wonder if maybe the meaning, the significance of Blue Skinned Beast maybe isn't lost on a lot of American fans. So Lee Thompson has said before in interviews that the Blue Skinned Beast is Margaret Thatcher. And as we've mentioned in previous episodes, the colors associated with the political parties in Great Britain are the opposite of what they are here in the United States. So here in the US, when we talk about blue states and red states, the blue states are usually the Democratic or the Democrat states, right? The more liberal of the two parties. And the red states are Republican, which are more conservative. Now in the UK, it's the opposite. The Conservative Party, formerly known as the Tory Party, was blue. And then the Liberal Party was red. And I think that was Labor, right? Wasn't the Liberal Party the Labor Party?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Margaret Thatcher, of course, being the Iron Lady, the prime minister and head of the Conservative Party, she was kind of, at the time, she was the British equivalent of Ronald Reagan, essentially. And Reagan and Thatcher were kind of besties. At least that's what they projected. I don't know how they felt about each other, privately, but now, speaking of the color blue, we have another song that references the Conservative Party, and that is called Turning Blue. And this one was written by Suggs and Chris Foreman. So according to Madness biographer John Reed, this song speaks of sinister international politics. And Suggs has said, in this one, we raise the issue of spending money on nuclear weapons. Let's listen to this one, Turning Blue.
Smile, the tears of a crocodile. Well, shake then wash your hands of the smell of foreign land. That propaganda woman said it might be what she could be dead. Now we've an impressive show. Let's wind it up and watch it go. Still the strange thing to me is there's no place I'd rather be. Roller coasting backwards to
anything you want to add on this one, Polly?
Not so much, no. In fact, I barely remember the song.
Okay. No.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
And up next, we've got another song we've talked a bunch about on the podcast before. It is a Chaz Smash and Woody composition. It's Michael Caine. Now, this song is about an informer during the Northern Ireland conflict, known euphemistically as the Troubles. Now, involved in the Troubles would be the Irish Republican Army. Carl is Irish and would have been acutely aware of the Troubles. In fact, during a tour, he was denied entry to Germany because of his Irish passport. Let's take a listen to Michael Caine.
I am Michael Caine.
He's walking where I'm afraid I don't know. I see the firemen jumping from the windows. There's panic and I hear somebody scream.
My name is Michael Caine.
And all I wanted was a word, a photograph to keep. And all I wanted was a word, a photograph to keep.
Lori, any thoughts on Michael Caine and its meaning?
I think the meaning is still kind of a little bit lost on me because I really don't know enough about the situation in Northern Ireland. I mean, I understand that it's an informer whose name happens to be Michael Caine. And I know that the band actually did get the actor Michael Caine to do the voiceovers, which I thought was amazing. Even though the political meaning is maybe lost on me, it's still an awesome song.
Yeah, that it is.
Okay, so the next song, as we've discussed in previous episodes, was actually left off of the American release of Keep Moving. And that would be Waltz into Mischief. Let's listen to Waltz into Mischief.
Gathered in tribute with masks of respect. A big hand hooray! Oh, come all you trustful, let the band play. A waltz into mischief. The chairman is speaking, inspects the apprentice.
All right, so I think I might have said this in a previous episode, but when I listen to the lyrics, with references to the Wizard of Sentence and crowds of white pointed heads, this seems to me it's pretty obviously about the KKK, right? You have grand wizards, you have the white pointed hats. So that's how I'm interpreting it. I don't know if that's what Carl and Suggs were getting at when they wrote this. Any thoughts about the meaning here, Polly? I know you're not the meaning guy. You don't get hung up on lyrics the way I get hung up on lyrics, but do you have any thoughts about this one?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I don't go through lyrics with a fine-tooth comb trying to figure everything out, but I think you're kind of onto something. I would question what else they could be referring to with those two lines that you mentioned. I do think the song title, Waltz into Mischief, does allude to the sort of parade marching that the KKK did.
And of course, the song's got a waltz beat, right? Time signature, 3/4 time. So it's consistent.
So next up is Victoria Gardens. That's a Chaz Smash and Mike Barson composition. And guesting on it is Dave Wakeling and Ranking Roger. Let's take a listen to Victoria Gardens.
I just left Victoria Gardens and walked through cardboard city life. A burnt out star was asking, how would I like to shake his hand? I walked on in no hurry. And wondered, where did we go wrong? Isn't hoping that things are changing for the better. Don't wanna preach or teach the blues to you, my brother.
As you know, Polly, this is one of my favorites that Madness has done. Love this song. And there are a few songs in this episode that if you read about the songwriting process, it kind of seems like a couple different ideas that kind of got meshed into one song. And I think that's the case with this one too. Like we have the references to Cardboard City Land. And Carl has said, he was walking around in like a very kind of rundown shantytown area people living in boxes. And somebody, I guess, actually was muttering to himself on the street something about a burnt out star. And so that's where that line about a burnt out star comes from. But then it kind of shifts a little bit when they do the lines. I look across Gray Leicester Square. A large and silent crowd were walking, said they had every right to be there. And that to me sounds like it's documenting a protest.
So Carl has said that this is about a campaign for nuclear disarmament march. The ban the bomb march. We have to take it kind of from him that probably is what they're alluding to. But I'm not so sure that there's not, like you said, quite a few other things thrown in there. Referring to Leicester Square, in the height of Thatcherism, when there was trash strikes and things of that nature, I guess the square was filled up with trash. And, I question whether, it wasn't a homeless encampment as well. So I think it's, it hints at the overall feeling they may have had about Thatcherism. And it's no wonder that Dave Wakeling and Ranking Roger were on the song. They were probably quite eager to. Dave's disdain for Margaret Thatcher goes way, way back, and he continues to talk about it to this day.
Then that's interesting too, because then I kind of wonder, the part that they're singing, trying to see if what you're preaching is the truth, sir. And now that kind of leads me to wonder, who are they speaking to? Are they speaking to somebody in a position of power? So another song off that same album, Keep Moving, one of my absolute favorites, One Better Day, which was written by Suggs and Mark Bedford. This is a commentary on homelessness. It mentions Arlington House, which is a homeless hostel in London. Now, Suggs has said, it's a terrible place. It's for displaced persons, not a home for psychopaths or loonies, but that's the way they're treated, like not being allowed in their rooms during the day. Let's listen to One Better Day.
Arlington House, address no fixed ever. An old man in a three-piece suit sits in the road. He stares across the water. He sees right through the lock. Torn and up like outstretched hands, his mumbled words, his fumbled words. Further down, a photo booth.
Well, it really is one of their better songs. The lyrics could have really been anything, but it's just lovely sounding. The video also as well, quite poignant. I think it's really some of their best work. And I think probably why it's some of their best work is it is really heartfelt. They weren't doing it to make a convenient sort of single. It was very genuine. Next up, we've got a Chrissy Boy and Suggs composition. It is Burning the Boats. Now, it's kind of an attack on government policy. Suggs is quoted as saying, during the miners' strike in the 80s, the police, for the first time, were allowed to stop the movement of people from one area to another. It really was starting to feel like a police state. Why don't we take a listen to Burning the Boats?
The government have announced that London Bridge is to be closed under the full moon of May the 3rd. All the lighthouses and seaside roads. No, I never heard, I never read in the news. Come on, tell me, who's this for?
Now, Lori, we've spoke about this before on the Mad Not Mad episode. I'm not really a fan of the style or the sound of this song, but nonetheless, it does have that political theme running through it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, now that I know that this is about police action during the miners' strike, some of the lyrics make a lot more sense to me. Like 1, 2, 3, what's the time? Who's that hanging off my line? That kind of implies like a wiretap, like somebody listening in on somebody's phones, or the London Bridge is to be closed, stuff like that, where they're closing it off, presumably due to striking and protests. So now I'm seeing it in a very different light. Now, I know when I was researching on this, Chrissy Boy, it sounds like he wasn't really a big fan of this song either, from what I was reading, even though he's one of the writers. Very interesting, now that I know the background about it. So that was on Mad Not Mad. And another pretty obviously political song on Mad Not Mad was Uncle Sam. And this was written by Chrissy Boy with Lee. And it's about the relationship between Great Britain and the US, specifically as allies who go to war together. So here's Uncle Sam.
Here they come again, hopscotching up to my door. One by one again, knockety knock knocking upon my floor. Swinging on my gate, they gain entry by the yard. Pulling at my hair, they scream, paint your thoughts upon my card. I've not tonight, I've got studies to examine. Tomorrow I'll be watching all the Queen's men. A talent contest on Monday with my Uncle Sam, who now takes up all of my time. He gives me things to do, cause he's a wonderful man. But I'm sailing across the sea to see my Uncle Sam. I'm sailing across the sea to be with my Uncle Sam. To be with my Uncle Sam.
Now, I found some very interesting quotes about this. So Suggs has said, it's a sarcastic look at the obsession people have with America and the power America has over England and the way they always talk about defending themselves. And Carl said, it was about the fact that the American way of life has taken over, mainly through monetarism, and how England kept all the worst sides of America and lost all its best sides. That was some pretty deep, heavy commentary there.
So that would, the context would get lost on a lot of people. I think it's a fairly upbeat and jovial type of song. So it would be really, really easy to lose the idea that this is about the relationship between Great Britain and the US as the two, world's prominent, military might. And it's not an uncharming song.
Well, it's interesting to me that the comment of Carl's about how England kept all the worst sides of America and lost all its best sides. And this is something I hear a lot from British friends on social media, like their kids are going to prom. Oh, what's this? What's this? This is an American thing. Why are we doing an American thing? And now, surprisingly enough, Halloween, it seems like every year around Halloween, I see a lot of British people, oh, well, why are we doing this American holiday? Now, that confuses me because Halloween, Samhain, is a Celtic holiday. That's your neck of the woods over there. Okay, that's not an American holiday. That's your holiday. So that strikes me as a little strange.
Next up, we've got a Suggs composition. It's Waiting for the Ghost Train. Now, if you listen closely, you might be able to tell that the song is in fact an anti-apartheid anthem. On June 20th, 1986, Madness played as part of Artists Against Apartheid at Brixton Academy in London. Let's take a listen to the song Waiting for the Ghost Train.
chested man, a pocket full of posies with a hat brim full of sand. Ooh, waiting for the train that never comes. A dog chasing the tumbleweeds across the sandy floor, a drift along the platform through the ticket office door. Ooh, waiting for the train that never comes. Waiting for the train that never comes.
Lori, thoughts on Waiting for the Ghost Train?
Well, it's a fun song, even though it has, again, this kind of darker meaning, right? And especially in that time period, mid 80s, 86, 87, around there. Over here in America, we had a number of musicians that banded together too, and they recorded that song Sun City in protest against apartheid, right? Little Steven, Jackson Brown. There were a lot of really, really big names that were in that. And it was everywhere, that kind of protest song against apartheid around that time. I kind of wonder if this might have been lost on some of the people that had accused Madness of racism in the previous decade. You know what I mean? I wonder if that was confusing to them, or, I don't know.
Yes, it is quite possible, because you have to really pay attention quite closely to really get at the meaning of the song. So, it could no doubt be just mistaken for a traditional pop song.
Well, and that's something you commented on, I think, on the previous song too, on Uncle Sam. There is always this juxtaposition with Madness, where they have very serious subject matter with very kind of upbeat, jaunty tune, where a lot of the people singing along maybe don't realize, the meaning of some of these songs.
So next up, we're going to talk about Vietnam, the song, the Jimmy Cliff song. Now, Madness did a cover of it. Didn't appear on any of their proper LPs, but it has appeared on the Forever Young collection. So go look for it there. Now, the song was written by Jimmy in 1969.
From my friend fighting in Vietnam, and this is what he had to say. Tell all my friends that I will be coming home soon. My time will be up sometime in June.
So that was recorded by the band sometime around 2005, right around the time they were doing the Dangerman sessions. They were doing a lot of covers. And as Polly mentioned, right, this is a cover of an old Jimmy Cliff song. So the lyrics, "Don't be alarmed, she told me, the telegram said. Oh, but Mistress Brown, your son is dead." And then elsewhere in the song, "Somebody please stop that war now." So it is very clearly an anti-Vietnam War protest song, which maybe seems a little weird in 2005, when, a lot of people don't remember the Vietnam War, maybe don't remember the controversy about it. But I think they were getting back to their ska roots at the time. And this was, we talked at the beginning of the podcast here about ska having very political roots. And this song by Jimmy Cliff really speaks to that, doesn't it?
It does. And it's remarkable, the simplicity with which Jimmy Cliff wrote that. And of course, the Madness cover is very faithful to it as well, which I think is good. They didn't mess about with it at all. They just did a very straight ahead cover. But, unlike other Vietnam protest songs, Fortunate Son. Jimmy Cliff apparently did not feel compelled to write a very nuanced, very subtextual song. He just laid it out in 3 verses. I got a letter the other day from my friend in Vietnam, talks about the girlfriend, talks about the mother, talks about, I'm already on my way home, essentially. I'm just about ready to be released from my tour. And then, of course, the last verse with the mother getting the telegram and saying that the son is dead. And that's it.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to go on and prattle on about the horribleness of it or anything like that. And the last half of the song is just saying Vietnam over and over and over. But it's melodical, it's musical, it's a great tempo, just fantastic all the way through.
Well, and it's probably worth noting, too, that the context, right, in 1969, Jimmy Cliff, right, a Black man writing this song, because Black and brown people were more likely to fight and die in the Vietnam War simply because white people, generally speaking, had more ways of getting out of it. Where, like, for example, they could go to college and so they could get out of the draft, where that was not available to as many Black men because, they didn't necessarily have the means for it. So it makes sense that there would be a Jamaican ska performer that would be writing about this from the perspective of a Black man, right? From his perspective. Okay, so next up, we have a few more recent songs. One of them is called Mumbo Jumbo. And this was written by Tomo along with a man named Keith Finch. Let's listen to it a little bit. So the lyrics again, you represent the party, but never portray. The crumbling infrastructure comes falling away. Coming together, raise your right arm. Stoke a little fear back to Maggie's farm. So raising the right arm, obviously that's a fascist salute. Maggie's farm, Margaret Thatcher. Even though this is a more recent song, it's hearkening back to the days of Thatcherism in the Conservative Party. We can kind of trace a direct line, I think, from Boris Johnson, who's currently the prime minister, all the way back to Maggie Thatcher.
I think you're onto something there, Lori. In fact, Suggs was quoted as saying, it's also a little bit political in itself. This delusionment with the powers that be that had led us to Brexit and all the other shit we were going through at the time. Well, I guess we can tell what side of the Brexit argument Suggs fell on. But yes, that's, I think with a lot of artists, when they can put their finger on the pulse of what's going on and they can sense that disillusionment, I think a lot of times people feel obligated to write about it. Okay, and off the Can't Catch Us Now album, there was a song, Mr. Apples. It was written by Suggs. Why don't we take a listen?
Respected man, woe betide you if you wander from God's plan. Square-shouldered, straight as a die, the righteous truth, he never tell you no lies. But when that old sun go down, he's heading off up the wrong side of town. Eyes sparkle in the red light glow, trouser pockets, he's ready to go.
that was Mr. Apples, Lori. What's your take on it?
Well, it definitely is calling out the hypocrisy of certain classes of people, isn't it?
Yeah, that it is. The don't the kind of do as I say, not as I do crowd.
As a matter of fact, we found a quotation from Suggs. So he said, maybe it's a British thing, but there seem to be great swaths of the upper echelons of society who tell us how to behave, but behave in a completely different way themselves. So during the day, they're on a committee discussing prostitution and drugs, and by night, cavorting with those very same things.
And a good point to make. We're not free of that here in the United States. We see that quite often.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the most recent song that we have, this is the last one we're going to talk about today. This came out about 2 years ago. It's called Bullingdon Boys. Now, this was originally a one-off single. They put it on the most recent American compilation album, which was Our House, The Very Best of Madness. New Music Express has said that the song is inspired by the fact that 19 of the 54 UK prime ministers have come from Eton. The new song takes aim at Johnson, who was educated at Eton College before going on to study at Oxford, and his peers, with anti-Tory lyrics. The Tories, the Conservative Party, of which Boris Johnson, the prime minister, is a member, and kind of how this elite clique, if you will, who have gone through this particular school, have come to be the ruling class in the UK. Let's listen to Bullingdon Boys.
A pretty sight, the lads are out tonight. They long to give their all, with backs against the wall. The game's one-upmanship, and sure they'll let it rip. You'll have a go in our comedy horror show. It's not a pantomime.
So that was Bullingdon Boys, which Mike Barson wrote. Polly, what do you think?
Well, we certainly have parallels to that scenario in the United States. Yale sometimes viewed as a college that produces a lot of folks that go on to political aspirations, a lot of legacy candidates there. Parents are parents who went there, and they've been in politics in their respective states forever. And also, I feel like, from a working class guy's perspective, it seems that certain people go to a school, graduate, whether they do particularly well or not, but they're just on a fast track to, be corporate leaders and things like that. It has as much to do, I think, with what school you've gone to as what potentially what family you're in, your connections, things like that. So it seems as though, there's also something here in the United States that kind of circumvents and cuts out, those ladders, those ways up for a lot of people like us. So yeah, it's not unique to the UK by any means.
It was a really interesting choice for them to put this on the Our House compilation album, though, just because, again, I think the whole idea of Bullingdon Boys and Eton, I think, would be lost on most Americans. I don't think they'd get that reference. I don't know. That was a weird decision. Like, maybe who are they targeting here with this album that they're throwing that in there,
Sure. I think it's really just a matter of timing. So there had been, Can't Touch Us Now and the Full House compilation released in pretty close succession. I can't even remember which one was released first. And then, of course, they went back in the studio and produced Bullingdon Boys. So the next album that would be released would be the American compilation. So I'm sure they just wanted to slide it on there so it'd be on some media.
Gotcha. So this concludes our examination into the politics of madness. And, you know, again, some of the band members are a little bit more active politically than others. As is our tradition, we like to close with a song. Oftentimes it's a cover version of one of the songs from the episode. And I really had to dig into my my music collection for this one. Polly, have you heard this version of Michael Caine that I'm about to play?
Yeah, that I have, and I actually
Have you?
like it. I think it's a bit refreshing compared to the original. I like it.
See, I thought maybe I was going to impress you with something you'd never heard before. So this is a cover by a German electronic band called And One. They were really, really big around here in like the early 2000s at all the dance clubs. I think the song that they're best known for is Panzermensch, which would always get the dance floor going crazy. So this is one of maybe their more mellow songs. This is a cover of Michael Caine by And One. And on that note, thank you so much. Tune in 2 weeks. We have a special surprise episode coming up. And it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me. Go get a beer, Stateside Madness.
He's walking away, I'm afraid I don't know. I see the fun jumping from the window. They're standing and I hear somebody scream. He picks up useless paper and puts it in my pocket. I'm trying very hard to keep my fingers clean. I can't remember, tell me what's his name. And all I wanted was a word, a photograph to keep at home. And all I wanted was a word, a photograph to keep. The sun is laughing, it's another broken morning. I see a shadow and call, I took time warning. He didn't seem to hear, just turned away. The quiet fellow follows, points his finger straight at you. He had to sacrifice his pride, yes, throw it all away. Throw it all away. And all I wanted was a word, a photograph